That warm evening on the porch, friends, I thought it would be just another quiet night. You know, the kind feet stretched out, soft breeze, playing with my hair, and a cold glass of iced tea, sweating on the little table beside me. I never expected that a single conversation would turn my world upside down. But before I take you back to that night, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? I'd love to know. Are you tuning in from New York, Los Angeles? Maybe a small town in Texas? Or even from another country? Drop it in the comments. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. And hey, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. We're so close to reaching 500 amazing subscribers, and every single one of you helps this little channel grow. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. Now let's return to that porch. The sun had just dipped behind the line of trees, painting the sky in soft strokes of orange, pink, and lavender. That was always my favorite moment, when the world seemed to pause. The old wooden swing creaked gently, its cushions fluffed just the way I like them. Beside me sat a fresh pitcher of lemon iced tea, catching drops of condensation. It was my sanctuary, my escape from endless chores and the ticking of the clock. And then I saw him. Walking up the gravel path was my cousin Daniel. He was about 10 years younger than me, but ever since we were children, there had always been this unspoken understanding between us. A bond that didn't need words to fill the silence. "Evening, Anna," he said, with that half smile of his. "Daniel," I answered, nodding toward the space beside me. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." He sat down the swing, shifting beneath our combined weight. For a while, neither of us spoke. The crickets chirped. A dog barked in the distance. And I noticed something unusual. His eyes. They weren't settled. Something was stirring behind them. "Long day?" I finally asked. He chuckled, running a hand through his dark hair. "You could say that. But I just needed to get out of my head for a while. And somehow I ended up here." I reached for the extra glass I always kept ready and poured him some tea. Well, I smiled. "You came to the right porch. We serve truth here with a splash of lemon." That made him laugh. Really laugh, the kind of laugh that lightens the air around you. We talked about simple things, his work, the old house he was restoring, silly childhood memories of chaotic family picnics, when my hair was still dark and carefree. But then the conversation shifted. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, staring out into the darkening yard, "if we're all just pretending, telling ourselves this is the life we wanted, only because it's the life we ended up with?" His words landed heavy. My heart slowed. I didn't answer right away. "You always seemed so sure, Anna," he added, "even when things went wrong. You looked content." My throat tightened. It wasn't a compliment, it was an observation, one that cut deep. I got good at smiling, I admitted quietly. "You learn that when people expect it of you. If I kept the garden tidy, if dinner was always warm." No one asked why my eyes looked tired. He didn't interrupt. He was listening in that rare way, not just hearing words, but holding them. I stayed in a marriage that made me feel invisible. I continued softly. I played the role I was supposed to. And now that it's all over, I don't even know who I am without it. Daniel leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. His voice was low, almost tender. "Anna, I always admired you. I just never knew you felt so alone." I gave him a sad smile. "That's the thing about being strong. People assume you don't need anyone." And then, in a gesture so simple yet so unexpected, he placed his hand lightly over mine. Not demanding, not crossing a line, just warm, familiar, human. "I came here tonight," he said softly, "because I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't think I'd lost my mind. And maybe because I missed you. The real you. Not the version everyone else sees. Just Anna." Something inside me shifted at those words. I hadn't expected it. But oh, how deeply they touched a part of me that had been silent for too long. That part of me, the part that remembered who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's sister, quietly stirred again. Just Anna. Not defined by roles, but by the girl I used to be. Then maybe I whispered, "We're both here for the same reason." Daniel's thumb brushed gently across the back of my hand. Not in a romantic way, not crossing a line. Just a human touch, honest grounding, and deeply comforting. And in that small, unexpected moment, sitting on the porch with the cousin who had known me all my life, I realized something profound. Clarity doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in a single sentence, a steady presence, or a silence that feels safe. The porch swing creaked softly as we leaned back, our eyes following the first stars appearing in the sky. No words were needed. The silence between us had already said enough. Yet deep down, I knew something had shifted. And I knew that the next time I looked into the mirror, I would see myself differently. The next morning, the golden light of the sun filtered through my kitchen window, casting warm streaks across the linoleum floor. I stood at the sink coffee, warming my hands, my eyes staring out at the dew-kissed grass. But I wasn't really seeing the yard. My mind was still on the porch, still on Daniel, still replaying the way his words had unsettled something inside me. Not in a painful way, but in a way that woke me up. He hadn't looked at me with pity. No, it was recognition. Like he'd peeled back a layer of me I didn't even know existed anymore. We'd always shared a bond, Daniel and I, but that night was different. It wasn't family chatter. It wasn't small talk. It was raw, emotional, real, and strangely, it left me comforted. By midday, I caught myself glancing at the driveway, half expecting his old truck to pull up again. It didn't. And maybe that was for the best, I told myself. But when the late afternoon air cooled and the shadows grew long, I found myself back on that porch swing. Same glass of iced tea, same restless heart, then the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. My stomach fluttered, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. I stood brushing invisible dust from my skirt as Daniel stepped out of his truck. He looked uncertain for a moment, almost shy. "I brought you something," he said, holding up a small brown paper bag. "What's this?" I asked, already smiling. "Fresh peach pie. Straight from the diner." "Ah," I teased, "so you're bribing your way back onto the porch?" He grinned. "Something like that." We settled in again, the sweet smell of peach pie, mingling with the earthy scent of evening. He handed me a fork, and for a while we simply ate quietly. Shared bites, shared glances. And then he asked, his eyes fixed on the horizon, "Did you think about last night?" Yes, I admitted softly. More than I expected to. He nodded like he already knew. I wasn't trying to make things complicated. I've been carrying so much inside. And here with you, it feels safe to let some of it go. No pretending. I looked down at my plate, then back at him. That's exactly how I felt. It's strange, isn't it? You go through life, coloring inside the lines, doing all the things you're supposed to do. And then one honest moment makes you question if any of it ever truly felt like you. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned back, his arm resting along the back of the swing. Not touching me, just near enough that I could feel the warmth of him there. The silence returned, but now it had become its own language between us. And then a memory surfaced. "Do you remember when we were kids?" he asked suddenly. "You used to sneak me cookies from Aunt Miriam's tin when she wasn't looking." I laughed out loud, the sound surprising even me. Of course, I thought I was so clever. "She never caught me." "She did?" He smirked. "She just let you get away with it." She used to say Anna's got mischief in her eyes, but kindness in her hands. The words hit me like a gift I didn't know I needed. I hadn't thought about that in years, and hearing it now from him was like being handed back a forgotten piece of myself. I missed that version of you Daniel whispered. The one who bent the rules. The one who wasn't afraid to take chances. I turned toward him, our eyes locking in the fading light. "She's still here," I said softly. "I think I just forgot how to let her out." He didn't smile. He just looked at me. Really looked. And in that gaze, I didn't just feel nostalgia. I felt seen, and then I realized how close we were. The soft brush of his knee against mine. The air between us, alive with something neither of us dared name. Friends, can I pause here and ask you, have you ever had a moment like this? A conversation that wasn't romantic, wasn't dramatic, but somehow changed how you saw yourself. Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world. And together, we're getting so close to 500 subscribers. Thank you for being part of this little family. The evening breeze lifted a loose strand of my hair, teasing it across my cheek. Before I could move it, Daniel reached out, gentle, almost hesitant, and tucked it behind my ear. He didn't say a word, but the touch sent a quiet shiver through me. Not of fear, not of uncertainty, but of something thrilling, something alive. I searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for any sign that I was imagining this moment. But his eyes held only tenderness, respect, and something unspoken that made my heart beat faster than it had in years. "Anna," he said my name like it was something sacred. "I know how this looks, but I'm not here to stir up anything messy. I've spent too many years holding back the words I should have spoken. And last night reminded me silence can be its own kind of prison." I placed my hand gently over his on the swing. His skin felt warm, steady, familiar, in a way that somehow felt completely new. "I'm not afraid of complicated," I whispered. "I'm afraid of never feeling anything real again." And that was the moment everything shifted. Not because of a kiss, not because of some dramatic confession, but because the air between us finally became honest. And that honesty, fragile as it was more powerful than anything I'd felt in decades. The sun dipped lower, brushing the yard in a soft, golden glow. And as we sat there, our hands lightly entwined, I realized something simple, yet profound. The world hadn't ended. It had only just opened quietly, gently, like a window I hadn't even realized was stuck. And I was finally ready to breathe again. The days that followed felt different, almost dreamlike. Daniel didn't come by every day, but when he did, it felt as if the very air shifted. The porch, the yard, even the way sunlight touched the railing, everything seemed alive in his presence. I told myself not to read too much into it, to keep my heart guarded. But hearts rarely listen to reason. This wasn't about romance, not exactly. It was about being seen, being heard, about realizing that someone had been quietly noticing you all along, not with judgment or expectation, but with understanding. And friends, let me ask you, have you ever had that kind of moment, that sudden realization that someone sees you, not for the roles you play, but for the person you truly are? If you have, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Your stories make this space so much richer. One afternoon, I was in the garden pruning roses that had grown wild in the summer heat. The thorns scratched at my gloves, but I didn't mind. There's something soothing about working with roses, stubborn, beautiful, a little dangerous. Like me, maybe. I didn't hear Daniel's truck until it stopped behind me. "You always did love those roses." His voice came warm, steady. I turned, brushing a curl from my cheek. "They're stubborn like me." He grinned, sleeves rolled up, arms dusted with flour. "I made cobbler. Thought you might be my taste tester." I laughed softly. How could I ever say no to that? In the kitchen, we stood side by side, forks in hand, the smell of peaches and sugar filling the air. We laughed easily, moving around each other as if we'd done it 100 times. And then came that familiar quiet again. The silence that wasn't empty but full-weighted with something unspoken. Daniel set his plate down, leaning against the counter. His eyes were steady. "Anna, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. "Why didn't you ever leave?" I didn't need clarification. He meant my marriage. The one that had drained the joy from me year by year until I was only a shadow of myself. I sighed, walking to the window where soft light filtered through the trees. Because I thought leaving meant I failed, I admitted. I thought if I tried harder, prayed longer, gave more, maybe things would change. And by the time I realized they wouldn't, I was too tired to start over. He moved closer, not crowding me, just standing near. "You didn't fail. You survived." "And that's not the same thing." I turned, then studying his face. There was no flattery in his words, no empty comfort. He believed it, and now he asked softly. I paused, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "Now, I think maybe surviving isn't enough. Maybe I want to feel alive again." His breath caught so faint, I almost didn't hear it. And then his hand found mine. This time not by accident. This time with intention. "Can I tell you something I've never said out loud?" he asked. "Yes. When I was younger, I used to watch you at family gatherings," he began. not in a childish crush sort of way, but with admiration. You were the one who lit up the room, the one who laughed with your whole chest. You made people feel at ease. And even as I grew older, that never changed. My throat tightened. Gratitude, disbelief, grief. For all the years I hadn't seen myself through his eyes, all of it tangled inside me. I don't know what this is between us, he continued. And I'm not trying to give it a name too soon. But I do know this: when I'm near you, I feel more like myself. And I haven't felt that in a very long time. Tears brimmed in my eyes, though none fell. You make me feel like I'm allowed to be seen. Daniel reached up his thumb, brushing softly along my cheek, tracing the line beneath my eye. Anna, you deserve more than being seen. You deserve to be cherished. My heart beat steady certain. And in that moment, we didn't kiss. We didn't need to, because the truth was already there between us. Thank you for listening to this part of the story, friends. And if you've made it this far, I want to say, from the bottom of my heart, your support means everything. We're so close to reaching 500 subscribers, and it would mean the world if you join this little community by hitting that subscribe button. Let's grow together. The closeness we shared that night, it was deeper than any embrace. It wasn't about hands or touch. It was about souls meeting, quiet, unshaken, but profound. Later, as Clara and Mark sat on the old porch swing, the stars slowly pierced the sky. Their shoulders brushed every so often small reminders that life, in all its fragility, was still unfolding right here, right now. Mark opened up his regrets, the mistakes he wished he could rewrite. And Clara listened, not as a judge, but as a woman who carried her own silent regrets. And she spoke of the version of herself that once wrote poetry, that once dreamed of foreign cities, that once painted watercolors in the attic. He didn't just nod politely. He leaned in, he asked. He wanted to know her. I want to see those paintings, he said. Clara laughed softly. They're terrible. Even better. Mark smiled, and under the scent of honeysuckle, with the soft hum of crickets in the air, Clara realized it wasn't about rewriting the past or chasing something wild. It was about rediscovering the woman she had buried under duty, under time. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from something. She was walking toward it. The next morning wasn't dramatic, but real change never is. Clara found herself humming in the kitchen, her hand brushing against old watercolor brushes she hadn't touched in 20 years. That afternoon, she climbed the attic stairs, dust cobwebs, cedar, and memories all waiting for her. She opened the trunk, and there they were. Sketchbooks, journals, canvases, pieces of her once forgotten self. When Mark arrived at sunset, he didn't need an invitation. Their rhythm was unspoken now. Painting ghosts up here, he teased. Clara smiled, maybe just exercising a few. They sat cross-legged on the attic floor, like children sharing forgotten dreams. Mark flipped through the sketchbook with reverence. These are beautiful, he whispered. They used to be, Clara replied. But then life happened, and I started seeing the world through everyone else's eyes, but mine. Mark didn't answer right away. The attic light carved his face into something new. Then he asked gently, Do you want to try again? Not just painting living for yourself. Clara's breath caught. I think I do, but it feels late. Like I've missed the train. Or maybe Mark said softly, the train was always waiting. Maybe you just had to be ready. Her tears came not of sadness, but of release. Of finally feeling seen. She looked at him, really looked, and whispered, Mark, what is this between us? He reached for her hand, grounding her. I can't label it. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel like I've come home. And I don't mean the porch or the pie. I mean you. Clara laughed gently through her tears. You're going to make me believe in second chances. Maybe Mark said, this isn't a second chance? Maybe it's the first real one. From then on, there were no grand confessions, no dramatic promises. Just quiet mornings, with coffee, laughter, spilling in a once silent house, paintbrushes dipped in color again. Mark didn't save her, and Clara didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. They simply met in the middle, two people carrying complicated lives, finding joy in peach cobbler, folding chairs, and names spoken with tenderness. One evening, as the cicadas sang and the world slowed, Mark took her hand and said, Clara, wherever this leads, I'm glad we found our way here. And in that moment, Clara, who once forgot how to dream, finally understood. It is never too late. Never too late to be seen, never too late to begin again, and never too late to discover that the love we need doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it just sits quietly beside us until we're ready to notice. And dear friends, I want to ask you a little, where are you watching this story from? Leave your city or country. In the comments, I would love to know where the channel's audience is from around the world. If you feel that Clara and Mark's story has touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel to accompany me on this storytelling journey. We are very close to the 500 subscriber mark, and your support will be the biggest motivation for me to continue bringing emotional stories like today.